his life. And good evening, I'm George Smith.
I'm Shunmin Chow. Thanks for joining us.
With the prospect of war in Iraq becoming more realistic each and every day, voices here at home are growing louder and louder.
Area residents on both sides of the emotionally charged issue want their opinions known. 11 News reporter Mike Zentek introduces us to two young Houstonians. They're the same age, but see the potential conflict through two very different sets of eyes.
They came to a small patch of green in the woodlands not to play, but to pledge. Pledge support for U.S. troops and the president who would make the decision to send them into Iraq.
Our generation doesn't know what it means to give up for something greater than yourself, you know?
26-year-old Joanna Escobar drove an hour from Sugar Land to be part of the crowd.
Yes, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
She claims many other 20-somethings are on her side of the fence.
People that live in Iraq, it's important to liberate them and give them what we have, that we take for granted every single day. We have.
And a couple of hours later, in a different part of the Houston area, another 26-year-old was making a very different statement about the possibility of war in Iraq.
I believe in freedom and I believe in democracy.
Which is why medical student Matthew O'Connor joined about 24 protesters on the Dunleavy Bridge over Highway 59, who let their signs speak to the drivers buzzing along underneath. O'Connor and others aren't persuaded by the president's push.
This isn't going to be a war against Saddam Hussein. It's going to be a war against the people of Iraq. A lot of people are going to die if we go in there.
Joanna Escobar couldn't disagree more. Different opinions in a land where you can freely express them. Mike Zentek, 11 News.
You may remember that earlier this year, two war protesters were arrested for attaching a sign to the Dunleavy Bridge. That's why today's demonstrators simply held on to their signs. And Houston wasn't the only American city playing host to war-related rallies today. Thousands of protesters from more than 100 cities gathered at the Washington Monument. Many say that they're clinging to hope that could stop the march to war, or at least slow it. About a half dozen protesters were arrested. Larger rallies also took place from California to West Virginia.
An anti-war call went out globally today as well. From Asia through Europe and the Middle East, protesters are pushing for peace. Protesters in Spain said no to any possible U.S.-led attack against Iraq today. Organizers were expecting as many as 1 million people. Spain's prime minister has been a staunch supporter of the tough U.S. and British stance on Iraq. Police in France were expecting around 200,000 demonstrators on the streets of Paris today. French President Jacques Chirac has vowed to use his veto at the United Nations if Washington seeks UN backing for a resolution that permits military action against Iraq. Protests in Athens, Greece turned dramatic. Tens of thousands of people marched to the U.S. Embassy. Some women staged street performances while holding baby mannequins. And at one point, protesters threw bones on the ground outside the embassy. Many of those opposed to war in Moscow, Russia, expressed their opinion by burning American flags. Opinion polls have shown that an overwhelming majority of the nation backs its government in opposing force. One protester said President Bush was making clear he'll remove whatever leader he doesn't like. And in Baghdad, Iraq today, hundreds of thousands protested against U.S. policy. Senior Iraqi military officials told President Saddam Hussein today that preparations for the defense of the country have been completed. Here are the latest headlines tonight. Sources say the Bush administration has taken back its offer of $15 billion in aid to Turkey in exchange for military cooperation.
Iraq has invited the two chief UN weapons inspectors to Baghdad as early as possible to speed up cooperation on disarmament.
And President Bush chided the international community for not supporting the U.S. securing a UN resolution backing force.
The President and the Prime Ministers of Britain and Spain will hold an emergency summit tomorrow in Portugal's Azores Islands. The White House says it isn't a council of war, but a last push for diplomacy. The leaders are trying to find enough votes for their UN resolution. The diplomats at the United Nations said today that negotiations appear to be all but over. France, Russia, and Germany called for the UN Security Council to set a timetable for Iraqi disarmament, but they also issued a strong statement rejecting war. Those three nations have called for the Security Council foreign ministers to meet on Tuesday. They want to draw up a timetable to certify Iraq free of weapons of mass destruction.
UN weapons inspectors continued visiting sites around Baghdad today, and inspectors watched over the destruction of more of Iraqi's illegal missiles. A total of 65 Al-Samud-2 missiles and 42 warheads have been dismantled. The United Nations says the missiles exceed maximum range limits. The U.S. and Britain have dismissed the move as insufficient and called for more sweeping steps to disarm. Chief Inspector Hans Blix will present his latest report on Monday. The British Foreign Secretary says the chances of war are growing, and today U.S. Rear Admiral Barry Costello met Commodore Jamie Miller on board Britain's flagship aircraft carrier. They were discussing plans for a naval campaign. Costello says planning is just about complete. Execution is next, and they're ready to move forward.
Hundreds of area reservists got a little help today from their friends at the Red Cross. Many of the soldiers are getting ready for deployment, so the Red Cross held a briefing letting them know how the organization can help while they're overseas. The Red Cross says it has two primary purposes when assisting the troops. First is providing emergency communication between the soldiers and their relatives. It also provides financial assistance.
The fear of war is not enough to stop a local children's choir from living a dream. The St. Cecilia Singers have decided to head to Rome anyway to sing for the Pope. 11 News reporter Wendell Edwards tells us about the special invitation that comes with a warning.
Across the year, they have practiced and practiced and practiced until their 45 voices blended as one.
We've had to have Saturday practices from 9 to 3, and we've just been rehearsing our songs. We've had to go home every day and practice it for at least an hour, and we've really gotten to know our songs.
And yet tonight, another practice in preparation of a concert in front of friends and family. All of it readying them for the biggest concert of all, performing at the Vatican in Rome, Italy.
We're going to get to be in front of the Pope and sing. I think that's just such a great opportunity.
Opportunity that comes at a time of utmost uncertainty. The St. Cecilia Singers will be making the trip to Europe during a time when America is on the brink of a war in the Middle East. That fact led director Stephen Sloper to warn the choir and their families about Americans speaking overseas.
We're kind of downplaying the American thing a little bit. Obviously we're American. We're singing a lot of American music by American composers. But I've just told the kids and their families not to wear, American flags on all their clothes and all that stuff, just for safety.
With the talk of war and the threat of terrorism, some choir students say they don't know what makes them more nervous, traveling overseas or performing in front of the Pope.
I'm more nervous singing to the Pope because there's nothing to worry about being overseas because I know that the Lord is going to guide us there. Just breaking out overseas because I'm very comfortable with all my music. I memorized it and it's going to be a great concert that we do for him.
A great concert from a small group with the big boys. In West Houston, Wendell Edwards, 11 News.
The choir will be in Rome for 8 days. They'll perform for the Pope on Wednesday and at Mass on Sunday, March 23rd. A little bit of pressure performing for the Pope. Be sure to stay with 11 News for up-to-the-minute coverage of the showdown with Saddam. You can also head to our website, khou.com, for complete coverage. Just click on the Iraq banner.
An apartment explosion in Dickinson this afternoon left a 74-year-old man with second and third degree burns. They are over 95% of his body. The natural gas explosion actually threw the man outside. It also started a small fire that neighbors tried to fight with buckets of water and hoses. Dickinson firefighters finished the job. The man is in critical condition at Memorial Hermann Hospital. No word on a cause.
A South Houston family is asking for help tonight in finding their son. 19-year-old Roy Martinez has been missing since yesterday afternoon. He was last seen near Spencer and Shaver in South Houston. Martinez has Down syndrome and diabetes and does not have his medication with him. He was last seen wearing a red and white striped polo-style shirt, black pants, and black zippered shoes. If you have any information, you're asked to call South Houston Police.
While the community celebrates the return of Elizabeth Smart, investigators try to unravel the path she took with her alleged abduction. lives.
There are new warnings tonight about a mysterious form of pneumonia that's spreading fast.
The Houston Humane Society had its hands full today, rescuing nearly 30 neglected pets.
Plus, your forecast. How's the second half of your weekend shaping up?